What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and due to popular demand, you guys were out here in the Twitter streets, my DMs, the comments, tell me, okay, so these start sit videos, they're cool, but we prefer the top 24, the tier lists. So what am I doing? We're bringing that back. We're going to go over my top 24 rankings today, all, put into tiers. And with that being said, if you were one of the guys that really wanted these tier lists back, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. That is all I ask of you guys. Now, with that being said, let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight into this video. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
And now, not what I wanted. Now we're back in the top right corner where we belong, where we are at home on Thursdays. And in S tier, a man who is claiming his throne as RB1, Christian McCaffrey. The return of the Mac, it's here. The return of the Mac. Return of the Mac. I don't know, man. I don't know. Like I'm definitely liking this YouTube stuff, but I definitely do think, if I put my time and effort into it, like I really could have gotten caught up, in music production, like on SoundCloud and shit, bro. Like I'm really like that. But obviously, joking. Maybe I'll have somebody in the post edits, put a little music in there, turn me up in the headphones. But I'm just playing. This is a one take Drake. There are no edits. Now, Christian McCaffrey, he put up 26 points without a single touchdown last week in a bad game script against the Cardinals. Now, I say that it's a bad game script because they blew him out. It was like it was crazy because you wouldn't think the Cardinals would get blown out. Now, obviously, they had like Colt McCoy playing or whatever, but the game was out of hand by like the third quarter. Cam Newton was scoring touchdowns, and he still put up 26 points. Now, he plays the Washington football team this week, but I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't care. He is the RB1 moving forward. I don't care who he plays. He could go out there and play the Monstars from Space Jam. I don't care. I do not care. He could go out there and play the Pro Bowl, like the NFC Pro Bowl team, and I don't care. He's an RB1 moving forward. Lock it in. I don't care who he plays. Now, the other guy that is in that tier that Christian McCaffrey did take that throne from, a guy that I miss, putting as the RB1 in all of fantasy, is Jonathan Taylor. Now, this isn't a great matchup. He's going to be in Buffalo, and Buffalo is really good against the run. They're allowing the 32nd most fantasy points per game to running back, so really tough. Third best rush DVOA defense per Football Outsiders. The thing is that I kind of think that Jonathan Taylor is in a spot where he is just so good right now that he's matchup proof. He saw a season high in snap share last week, an 84% snap share. This has been the problem all along. He's super efficient. Just get him the ball more, get him on the field more, please, Frank Reich. And they've finally been doing it. 84% of the snaps is pretty good. Now, with that being said, he's been unstoppable. He now has a 25.7 point per game total since week 6. He just had a season high in snap share, like I just said. You got to just keep starting him. Like, that's why I'm putting him in S tier. He has just been such an efficiency monster where he can just get there. He's good to break one. He can get a touchdown or two. He just has to be respected in S tier, even in a bad matchup. This is literally the stone worst matchup, and I'm still comfortable putting him at RB2. But then we get to A tier, and that's where we get to kind of still, the high-end RB1s. We're kind of just splitting hairs here, but I like Dalvin Cook at RB3 at home against Green Bay. And he looked great against the Chargers last week. The problem is the Chargers are like a bottom 5 run D. He put up a quick 20 piece. Now, this is a pretty easy matchup. I kind of like these interdivisional matchups when it's like, okay, it's going to be the Vikings versus Packers. Just a really classic game. Dalvin Cook's been getting a ton of volume, and the Packers are bottom 10 in rush DVOA, so the usage should be there. The Packers aren't great against the run. I think Dalvin Cook will have a fine day. Probably, hover around that 18-point total, around 18 touches in that game. And next up at RB4, we have Najee Harris. And I had a tweet that had a lot of ruffled feathers over the weekend. I said, this is a true stat. Najee Harris, or at the time, Najee Harris had the 4th lowest fantasy points over expectation per game. He was underperforming his points per game by like 3 to 4 points per game every single week. He leads the league in expected points per game. He has like an expected points per game of 22. Now, expected points is just in a given game. So he had, in a given game, if you have 20 touches, depending on where they're at on the field, the goal line, the receptions, all that, given your volume, how much points per game you should be scoring. And if he just was a neutral, he wasn't super efficient, and he was just neutral, he would be the RB1 in all of fantasy. But because he's inefficient, he scores 4 points under expectation per game. he's in like the RB4 to RB5 range. And we saw that again this week. He saw 30 touches this week, and 30 touches against the Lions, mind you, and he only turned that into 15 points. So the usage is amazing. It's just that the inefficiency is so tough to, the usage is there to the point where he should be an S tier, but the efficiency isn't there to the point where I can put him there. Now, I hope that he proves me wrong. He has a great matchup against the Chargers this week. They're allowing the second most fantasy points to opposing running backs. And again, before I hear anything in the comments, Najee Harris is literally my RB4 this week. He is literally my RB4. I can't be much higher on Najee Harris than that, but I'm just saying, if your boy Najee Harris was just league average efficiency, and I get quarterback, offensive line, I get there's a bunch of things. I'm not even saying that he's not a talented player, but if he was just league average efficiency, he would be the RB1 overall in fantasy. He'd have more points per game than Jonathan Taylor. Now, going into our RB5, still in A tier, is Nick Chubb at home against the Lions. Now, I'll be honest, I'm struggling to find him here on this tier list. Oh, there he is. Nick Chubb doesn't really stand out. He's not a guy that really stands out. He doesn't got like hair or anything going on. But Nick Chubb is going to be at home against the Lions. This is going to be a game where they're 10-point favorites. Baker Mayfield is banged up. I saw an interview where he has like a torn labrum. He's got a knee problem, an ankle problem. He's struggling, man. And this just feels like a Nick Chubb explosion week. Now, he should be ready to go. He had COVID last week. I imagine he's going to be just fine. And Detroit is bottom 5 in rush DVOA defense, bottom 5 in fantasy points allowed to running backs. Again, they're heavy favorites in this game. The Browns should be able to just run all over the Lions in this game. Now, we're going to bump down to B tier, and this is where we go with Ezekiel Elliott. Now, these are still guys, still fine RB1 options. I just think that the usage and the efficiency are a little bit more of a tier, a bump down. And with this Ezekiel Elliott pick, when we're going to be talking about all week, so you're going to see this running back video today, the wide receiver video, the game of the week, America's game of the week. I don't know if it's actually America's game of the week, but my game of the week. Cowboys versus Chiefs. This is the game that you hope that in your lineup you have as many pieces as possible. The over-under is 56 points. You have the Chiefs, Dallas. It should be a ton of scoring. And no matter how much usage Ezekiel Elliott gets, I can't imagine a scenario where he doesn't score a touchdown. Put that on my record. I like Ezekiel Elliott anytime touchdown scorer. I don't know what it is this week, but if it's any better odds than like minus 150, I'm taking Ezekiel Elliott anytime touchdown scorer. I can't imagine him without a touchdown. There's going to be plenty of goal line opportunities. There's going to be plenty of points scored. On top of that, I like Tony Pollard a little bit more this week as, a RB3 option. Now, rolling into our RB7, we're going to talk about Austin Eckler here. And he's had a little bit of a slip recently, but he's still getting plenty of usage. He's still Austin Eckler. He has a top 25 finish each of his last 3 weeks. And the problem is that he has a bad matchup. He's my RB7 because he's going to be at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers' defense is tough to run on. Cameron Hayward is a dog, though I could have sworn I saw something about Cameron Hayward getting injured. Regardless, that Steelers' defense is a problem. I want to say it's going to be an ugly game when you have, I think they're going to have Mason Rudolph at quarterback again, so it's just not going to be a pretty game script. Now, the Chargers could easily run it up on them. The problem is that the Steelers' strength is defense, so it's good. It's gonna be a dragged out game, kind of. Like a war of attrition almost. Now, at RB8, we have our boy, Joe Mixon. He's been looking like a stud. He is the RB3 in the last 5 weeks, averaging 22.8 points per game. He now has 3 top 5 finishes in his last 4 games, and he's going to be playing in Las Vegas. Now, that's not really a super juicy matchup, but it's a neutral matchup. The Raiders are about, league average and allowing fantasy points and stopping the run. So I like Mixon just based off of usage, based on the fact that I think that this offense is due for, a bounce back here soon. They haven't been, lighting things up like they were in the beginning of the season. So I think that Joe Mixon's a nice, mid-range RB1. And the guy that's going to round out this tier at RB9 is DAndre Swift. He's going to play in Cleveland, and we're not sure what Jamal Williams' status is for this game yet, but DAndre Swift just saw 33 rushes last week with Williams out. He has never seen more than 15 in a single game this season. Now, I know it was an overtime game, but still 33 rushes is absolutely insane. And if Williams is out, Swift, you can bump him up a tier, and he's like a top 6 play. With Jamal Williams in, I still like him in this matchup. They're going to be playing, again, in Cleveland. And the reason why I love this pick is because, one, they're 10-point underdogs, so there's going to be plenty of passing checkdowns to DAndre Swift. And then on top of that, we got this nice little stat here. Shout out to Fantasy Intervention. And they track how good are defenses against opposing receiving running backs. How many receptions are they giving up? How good are they at stopping receiving backs? Cleveland Browns are bottom 5 in stopping receiving backs with that DOCE score. So that sets up really nice for DAndre Swift in a negative game script against a team that doesn't really stop receiving running backs too well. I think that DAndre Swift has had a lot of volume. He hasn't had one of those blow up weeks yet. I think that we're kind of in store for one right here. Now, moving on to C tier. These are the, not quite RB1s, but they're also, I wouldn't call them high-end RB2s. Like, they're fringe RB1s. And we're going to start this tier off with the man, the myth, the legend, A.J. Dillon, built like a bowling ball. He's built like the bullets in Mario Kart, man. That's what A.J. Dillon reminds me of. He's just the streamlined runner, just super compact, and this is showtime here for A.J. Dillon. This is put up or shut up time. This is time, Aaron Jones is gone. He's going to see 70% plus of the opportunities. He's going to be in Minnesota, and he could easily have, a top 5, top 3 week. He's going to have all of the opportunities. Minnesota is bottom 8 in fantasy points allowed to opposing running backs. This is it. If he goes crazy here, then A.J. Dillon, if I'm going to be honest with you guys, he should probably be in B tier. I just want to see it. In terms of like weekly rankings, I'm not trying to be super aggressive because you don't want to get cute with these guys. You don't want to go out there. I know some of you guys are crazy. I know some of you guys have crazy teams where maybe you only have, it's like a 10-teamer with one flex, and some of you guys might have, McCaffrey, Mixon, A.J. Dillon. I don't want to go out here and tell you, put A.J. Dillon here and be like, okay, yeah, you should put A.J. Dillon ahead of Joe Mixon. So we're going to put A.J. Dillon here. This is where I feel confident in starting an A.J. Dillon. And after that is another guy that all he needs is 1 week and he's shooting up these for next week. And it's Saquon Barkley. Now, he has a really tough matchup against the Buccaneers. He's going to be in Tampa Bay. So that is just brutal, given the fact that, Tampa Bay is one of the toughest run defenses, in terms of fantasy points allowed, rush DVOA, all that good stuff. Now, when we remember back to right before Saquon Barkley got hurt and was not out for the season, but, he rolled his ankle. Right before that, he played against the New Orleans Saints, and he put up a nice little 20-piece on him. So if he gets his usual workload, this is still Saquon Barkley. I know that some people don't really remember, but this is still Saquon Barkley, the guy that can take anything to the house, that can get chunk plays, that can score touchdowns. I still like him as a fringe RB1. I think that I'm going to be a lot higher than consensus on Saquon Barkley this week. I think a lot of guys have him more towards, the RB15 range. So, pencil him down. Saquon Barkley is like a start of the week for me. Then, moving on to the RB12, we have Leonard Fournette. He's going to be at home against the Giants. And Leonard Fournette quietly had a great week last week. He saw 85% of the rush attempts last week, and the Giants are giving up the 5th most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. And this is a dream matchup. They're at home. Again, they're giving up a ton of fantasy points to opposing running backs. They're 11-point favorites at home. I think their implied team totals like over 30 points. Leonard Fournette is probably like in his range of outcomes is like 20 carries, 100 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He could have the Ramondre Stevenson special this week. And moving off of that, the last running back in this tier is James Conner. And he'd probably be, you could make the case for him a little bit higher. The problem is that I don't think that Kyler Murray or DeAndre Hopkins are going to suit up this week. Now, that's to be determined. That hasn't come out yet. I think a lot of people are kind of treating it as if Kyler and Hopkins are playing. I don't expect them to play until after the bye, if I'm being completely honest. So that's a slight thing to the offense. Now, James Conner's playing in Seattle. And even with, I think they're going to play with like a CFL quarterback out there, which is just, you hate to see that. Regardless, though, the Seahawks are giving up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing running backs. He's the lead back on the team. So just given that, even with a held back offense, he's still going to be a fringe RB1, just given the volume. Now, before we get into D tier, let's bring it back. Let's just me and you, let's talk for a second. I just want to let you guys know this video, this tier list, sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. Those guys are what keep the lights on in the basement, allow me to do this full time. So I just want to let you guys know, I was doing a little perusing. We got the Thursday night game on tonight. Now, if you guys don't have any fantasy players on there, if you just want to put some money on the side, Underdog has some really good pickup games. You can hop on there, use my promo code ROM when you deposit $10 or more, and they'll match your deposit. If you put in 15, they'll match 15. If you put in 100, they'll match 100, all the way up to $100. Now, Kyle Pitts, let's do some fun facts here, all right? The Patriots are allowing the 6th least fantasy points to opposing tight ends. They have the 5th best pass defense per DVOA Football Outsiders. Kyle Pitts has only hit 63.5 or more receiving yards in 3 of his 9 career games. That's only 33% of the time. So that's not an even over-under. Then on top of that, the 3 teams that have allowed him to go off are all bottom 12 and allowing the most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. Again, remember, the Patriots are stingy in that category. I also think that Bill Belichick is just going to draw things up for Kyle Pitts and give him a tough time. I doubt he lets the other team's number 1 pass catching option go crazy on him, especially a rookie. Belichick, I know that that's a quarterback thing, but he gives rookies really hard times. Now, you can kind of take this pick, you bundle it up, you do a little parlay. I think you can get like 3 of them in there. You can 6x your money. So if you put, $10 in, you get the $10 bonus. You put $20 on Pitts, 2 others, and you can turn that 20 into a quick little, times 20 times 6 into like a quick 120. Now, it's either 6x or 4x or 3x, one of those. But I like Kyle Pitts. It's a nice building block. And then from there, you can kind of do whatever you like. Again, if you want to hop on there, have some fun, use my promo code RON when you deposit on Underdog. The link will be in the description. It'll be down below in the comments. Now, back to our regular scheduled program. We're going to talk about our D-tier running backs here. And first up, we have the man, the myth, the legend, David Montgomery. He came back, in his first week back from injury, Khalil Herbert looked amazing. Matt Nagy just wanted to shove the ball down David Montgomery's throat, man. He played an every down workhorse role. He was out there. He was almost out there to the point where it was obnoxious. It was like give the guy a breather, my man. Like Matt Nagy was, I don't know. Matt Nagy's just kind of a bozo to me. Regardless of David Montgomery, he came off his injury, got a huge workhorse type role, gets a bye week to rest up, and now he gets a neutral matchup at home against the Ravens. Nothing too crazy. They're about league average against the run, and as long as he gets the usage that he saw, he is going to be, a nice high-end RB2 pretty much until the end of time. And another guy in that same category this week is going to be James Robinson at home against San Francisco. Now, this is a tough matchup. San Francisco allows the third least amount of fantasy points to opposing running back, something in at least the bottom 10. And the thing I like about Robinson is that the usage is there. They're ramping up the usage. He looks better since the injury. I like him for, 60 yards and a touchdown. Oh, I don't know if my eyes are watering, but I had to get some water real quick. Your boy's struggling, man. I don't know what it is, but got a little bit of a cough, man. Now, into D tier, we have Josh Jacobs, another guy that's good for, 60 and a tud. We got Josh Jacobs. And now he has, a pretty juicy matchup at home against the Bengals. The Bengals are giving up the 7th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. I like Josh Jacobs this week. I don't mind Josh Jacobs in fantasy football anymore at this point, to be honest with you. He's kind of getting valued right where he should be at this point. And I like him, to have, 60 yards and a touchdown. That sounds about right for Josh Jacobs. Now, the next running back in this tier is a little bit different where he gets his fantasy points, from receiving, from checkdowns, and Michael Carter's been damn near matchup or quarterback proof. I think that he has been, a top 15 running back since week 4. He's had 4 different quarterbacks since then. I think that he's had Wilson, Mike White, Johnson, Flacco, and he's still putting on for New York at this point. Michael Carter is literally our only bright spot at this point. Now, he's going to be playing at home against Miami in MetLife, and Miami's allowing the 10th most fantasy points to opposing running backs, and I can't imagine Flacco not wanting to dump it off. I think that seems very Flacco-like to want to dump it off to Michael Carter. So I like Michael Carter in this matchup. Now, if I said that this was the last of the tier, I was lying because we have a couple more here. And next up, we have Antonio Gibson. And Gibson's really hard for me to trust, man. I love Antonio Gibson, the player. He is so talented. He has the receiving work. He has literally everything you look for. He has everything you want out of a stud running back. And he went crazy last week. The problem is that his role didn't change. He only saw 7% of the targets, where in the weeks before that he was at 6%, 8%. He hovers in that range, and that's not enough. You want like 12% plus. He's a between the tackles grinder on a bad team, which is tough because if you're a between the tackles grinder on a bad team, you're not going to have a ton of leads. Now, the Panthers aren't a great matchup either for him. That's why I have him all the way out 18, because they are allowing the 9th least points to opposing running backs. And the Panthers also look pretty dang good with Cam Newton and, PJ Walker at the helm. So, it could become a bad game script where then it becomes a J.D. McKissick game. So, it's tough, man. It's tough. Antonio Gibson really hurts, man. Again, RB18. That's the best I can do. Now, at RB19, we're going to have Myles Gaskin. And he's going to be in New York against the Jets, and he's been super boomer bust. These are his last 6-point totals. 5.5, then 15.7, then 8.5, then 17.7, then 3.4, then 31.9. He just keeps on going up and up. But I mean, I don't know. It's such a like a fourth grader take. Like I swear my brother on Xbox would be talking to his boys. He's like, hey man, like Myles Gaskin, he goes off one week, he goes off the next week. I mean, he just had 5.5. I think this is probably gonna be where he goes boom. And sometimes the analysis is just as simple as that. Sometimes the analysis is as simple as that. But regardless, he's a boomer bust running back, and the Jets awful against the run. They are allowing 30 points per game to opposing running back units. If he even sees, Myles Gaskin sees about like a 60% opportunity share. If he sees 60% of 30 points, oh man, you're asking me to do a lot. I want to say, what's that? 18? I don't know. That might be 18 on the nose. I could be wrong, but I think it's 18 on the nose. But 18 points for Myles Gaskin would be a huge win. So I think that's a really good matchup. Jets allow a ton of points against the run. So he is sneaking in there in D tier. Then we have E tier, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, this is where it gets just pretty disgusting. It gets really nasty here at the end. The running back landscape is just really rough this year, to be honest. Or I think it looks like this every year, if we're being honest. But regardless, we have Mark Ingram in Philadelphia. He was a top 10 running back last week, and he probably moves up this list. We just need some clarity on what's good with Kamara. I have him here. If Kamara's healthy, then Kamara's probably in this range. If Kamara's not healthy, then Ingram's probably in this range. But for now, I'm going to have him in E tier. We're going to be a little bit conservative here. Now, this is a neutral matchup against Philadelphia. It's nothing crazy, but the usage is going to be wild. Sean Payton loves to feed Mark Ingram the football, so he is a top 20 play this week if Kamara doesn't suit up. Next up, we have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. This has been the first time he's been in a rankings video in a long time, and again, we want pieces in this game. Again, remember the Chiefs-Cowboys game. That's what we want. 56-point total over-under. It's going to be a really high-scoring game. Plenty of goal line works for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If Clyde Edwards-Helaire plays, I like a little anytime touchdown score for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, don't quote me on it. Give me Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Ezekiel Elliott, like Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, anytime touchdown score. That's cashing. Put that if you put money on that parlay and you put it down in the comments, I don't know. I'll do something. But regardless, I think he's a fringy RB2, given the fact that touchdown opportunity will be there. The efficiency will be able to be there. The problem is that he could be limited because he's coming off the injury. Now, I think that there's a wide open spot for Clyde Edwards-Helaire to come right into because they haven't really been efficient on the ground, and I think the lack of the run game is what's been kind of holding back their offense a little bit here. So I do like Clyde Edwards-Helaire quite a bit once he does come back. It's just a matter of him being limited and kind of easing back into the offense. Now, another guy in that same exact situation. This is why it's like super ugly because all these guys are in the same situation. And the next one is Damien Harris, another guy coming back from injury. I don't feel good about this backfield at all. This used to be Ramondre Stevenson. Before I recorded, they came out with like, okay, Damien Harris doesn't have his concussion anymore. He's going to suit up for the Thursday game. So that's what we're working with now. And I think Harris probably gets the bulk of the workload. I don't think that Belichick is just going to abandon him, but I also do think that Stevenson looks great to the point where it will be a split. Now, I could even see, Damien Harris, he's off the practice report, all that good stuff, and then game time comes around and Belichick just forgets him. The same could happen in the other direction, where game time happens, Ramondre Stevenson's out there, Damien Harris is healthy, and Belichick just forgets him. Like, there's really no telling how to handle this backfield, so this is a really tough play. But regardless, it's a really good matchup on this Thursday night. We have the Falcons allowing the 8th most fantasy points, and I kind of expect the Patriots to walk all over them. The Patriots have been a top team, an absolute force in the NFL, if I'm being completely honest. Like, they look really good. So I think they probably handle the Falcons here. There's going to be a ton of points to be had on the ground. To be honest with you, I wouldn't be shocked at all if Damien Harris and Ramondre Stevenson both had like 12 plus points in this game. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Now, our last tier, F tier, there are maybe, this is where it gets, you got to hold your nose when you start to rank these guys. Now, you can make a case for like 10 to 15 dudes you want to put in these spots. Here are the guys that I chose. The first one that I chose is Devonta Freeman. I love that it has his Falcons headshot in here. Perfect. And I'll just take Freeman because I think they cut Le'Veon Bell. Latavius Murray's working back from his injury. I still don't think that they're going to give Latavius Murray the full workload they plan on giving him. So I think there will be this little window here for Devonta Freeman to really get a good chunk of the work. They're going to be in Chicago as 6-point favorites. I honestly think that they probably just run all over the Bears, even though it's a wonky game where it might be kind of like low scoring. I still don't mind Devonta Freeman in this matchup. And then our last running back here is Zach Moss. Again, nasty. Last week, I think he led the backfield in snaps with like a 38% snap share. It wasn't pretty. Matt Breida mixed in. Now, it's not a great matchup against the Colts. The Colts have the second best run defense per DVOA. I just don't mind it because it's a 50-point total. Zach Moss will be the lead back. I don't think it'd be wild for him to score a touchdown or get a couple passes here and there. So I don't mind Zach Moss as a play. Now, that's going to do it for us today. Remember, Kyle Pitts hammered the under 63.5 receiving yards. Now, that's going to do it. Make sure you use my promo code RON when you deposit on Underdog. You get your deposit matched. So if you put $10 in, they'll match $10. And if you want all my weekly rankings, so running back, wide receiver, quarterback, flex, if you want my rest of season rankings, my waiver wire articles, my dynasty rankings, all that good stuff, all on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. It'll be in the description. It'll be down below in the comments. I think the Underdog link will actually probably be down there, but we'll see. We'll see. It'll be a mystery when you go down there and check that out. Now, I love you guys. We're like 7.25K subscribers. We're kind of going crazy here. I was saying like 7.5K for Christmas. It seems like we're going to be hitting maybe 8K for Christmas. I don't know, but I love you guys. Tell your friends about the channel. I'll be coming on with the wide receiver video here. I'm going to record that tomorrow morning, so you guys will see that. When I say tomorrow morning, I'm recording this Wednesday night. So Thursday morning, you'll see this Thursday afternoon. Now, that's going to do it for us today, fellas. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice. Channel, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper, song, singer, suspended, subpoena from Mr. Me.